Mobilology is, as I define it, the study of the effect of mobile phone use on behavior, on community, on culture, on entertainment, and economics. So it's the first dynamic social science of the 21st century. I think it's an academic discipline. I call this the first dynamic social science of the 21st century because, to the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't think there have been any new academic fields that have been initiated in 10 years. But it's dynamic because it is inherently collaborative and interactive. So the good thing, among many, that the mobile phone has done is it has helped, it's beginning to erode the classical concept of the ivory tower, where you have a big university, which, at least in the United States model, you have the chancellor or the president, and then you have the provost, and then you have all of the different schools. Well, each of the schools is an ivory tower that operates essentially as an independent company within the structure of the greater corporation, and they each have their own budgets, and they have their own staffs, and they have their own concerns, and nobody talks to anybody, and they're all very protective of their boundaries and their walls because they need to do what they need to do. The advent of the mobile phone has made it possible for a professor in the psychology department who wants to be researching something about behavior that may relate to entertainment. They just pick up a phone and they dial, and through the airwaves, through the world, through the magic of technology, and I mean that in the best possible way, you pick up a phone and you call somebody in another department and you start talking and you start collaborating, and you find that there are possibilities not only for collaboration but for innovation. And this innovation defies the boundaries of the buildings that they're in. And it's really wreaking havoc in the best possible way with the university structure. And I like this. I like to see a new paradigm because the old one no longer works in this world. I believe the impact of mobile on the 21st century will define or begin to define this century in as important a way as the Industrial Revolution defined the 20th and the end of the 19th century. What I mean by that is that the changes are so profound that they are completely altering life as we knew it for improved reasons. I think that all of the technologies that were invented in the 20th century, but specifically with the Industrial Revolution, we had the factories, we had assembly lines, we had mass production of durable goods, and we have mass adoption of a brand new technology, but this time it's personalized. And one of the reasons that I am so set and impassioned about promoting Mobilology and getting people to think about what all of these changes mean is because I look at where we are now in terms of the Industrial Revolution. It's 100 years after, and life got a lot better. We introduced a lot of wonderful things, but now 100 years later, we're kind of scratching our heads and we're going, you know, maybe this pollution thing isn't so good. Maybe strip mining, maybe there's a better way to do it. Maybe greener this, better that. And we are 20 years into the mass acceptance of mobile phones. We're 10 years into a new century. And there are enough changes that are so obvious to me and really to anybody when I start to talk about this, that I want us to ask the hard questions now, the big questions, the tough and not the uncomfortable questions, so that we don't go 50 years and say, oh my God, what have we done? What has happened to the world as we knew it? I don't have the answers, and I certainly am not anti-technology, but I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we losing in this process of so-called connectivity? This constant texting and emailing and using the phones for everything, so that I'm always like this, but I'm never looking at you like this. And I want to make sure that this is the direction that we want to be going in collectively as a people, and that I talked about etiquette, which sounds very shallow, but etiquette is behavior and manners that have developed over a period of a very long time, and we're losing all forms of etiquette. People are being rude. People are not making connections. They are not engaging in small talk because they don't know how to, because the minute they're in any uncomfortable social situation, whether it's standing in line to get a coffee, standing in line waiting for the bus, standing in line, or sitting at a bar next to someone, instead of sitting there and going, how do you do, how are you, nice day, they're just going, pulling out their phones, and this concerns me. Mobile technology influences our behavior in terms of how you and I communicate with each other, even now, even in an interview. I have made an active choice to turn my phone off and to ignore it and to be unavailable. But this now is a choice that I am constantly forced to make. It influences how I choose to interact in public spaces. I had an architect come up to me after my lecture yesterday and say, I think what you're trying to say is that the use of mobile phones is affecting how we are behaving in public spaces. And I thought, yeah, that's a really good way to describe this. And it's not completely what it is, but it does really nail how we're behaving. It's a choice of whether I pick up a phone to have a private conversation while I'm sitting on a trolley car or in a doctor's office or in a restaurant. And those choices used to be decided for us by the greater community. Now, the greater community all has phones. The greater community all is doing the same thing. And I think a lot of people are wondering, what are we doing? I see some differences in the way that mobile phones are affecting our daily lives and culture. Again, I want to say I think primarily 95% of this is really good. It's doing great things. Culturally speaking, it's having a lot of different effects depending where a particular culture is. So I live in the urban United States. How it's affecting me is very different than the way it's going to affect people in developing parts of the world. So if you are a farmer in Africa or in China or anywhere in a not as developed part of the world, people are starting to use their mobiles for their very existence. They're using it to be able to find out what the weather forecast is. They've never been able to tell what the weather forecast is other than looking up in the sky or feeling the humidity on their skin or hearing from people that have been traveling, oh yes, it's raining in the north or it's raining in the south. So by having the phone as an adjunct to what their livelihood is, they're able to do it better. They can plant more efficiently, they can harvest more efficiently, they can get to market more efficiently without having food rot or spoil. So it's having a cultural difference in that sense, which is brilliant. What my concern goes to is what happens when the children of mom and dad, who are the farmers, or the manufacturers, or the retailers, or the traveling salesmen. I mean, it's not just an agricultural thing. What happens when their children pick up this device and just, start pushing some buttons and go, oh, wow, games. And they start bringing in pre-existing material from other cultures. We haven't really adequately examined, to the best of my knowledge, although part of why I'm doing what I'm doing is to see where the research is happening and to link people together, but we haven't really considered what's happening when we're importing cultures into other cultures. Different cultures have different acceptabilities in terms of morals and standards and behavior and all. And for some of the games that are out there, if this is the first thing that a child in India sees, or a young person in Nepal or anywhere in Africa sees, I worry that what they're actually seeing is the worst representation of my culture rather than the best. And who's paying attention to this? Who's watching this? I've had people say, oh, well, just take the phone away from them. But that's a very easy answer to a very complex dilemma.